Does height matter?
It definitely does.
It
You gotta be
does?
shorter than me.
You said height matters.
It does.
All right, and weight matters, so step on the scale.
Weight matters, but if you're not strong enough to carry me, then bye-bye.
All right, then let's see.
No, I don't want to do that. That's scary as fuck.
Why? You're judging guys based on height, so I'm judging you based on weight.
Guys, welcome to Better Bachelor. My name is Joker with a face for radio and a voice for print. Woke DEI is dealt a massive blow, and men get a huge win. If you're not too familiar with this, it wouldn't be a surprise because this is kind of a story that's going under the radar a little bit, and it hasn't even hit any mainstream news that I've seen. But somebody that breaks news on Twitter came across this and said, hey, this just passed, by the way, on April 17th, and this is a huge win for guys and a huge blow against DEI, even though the court case itself was to protect a woman. I'm gonna quickly read down into this, and then we'll talk about it. As you guys know, there's a lot of ads that are going out for men, for people for a job, and it'll say looking for diverse this, and for women, and for LGHD TV, and if your skin is brown, and if you're native, and if you're by the time you get to the end of the list, you realize, so that's pretty much everybody but white men. And that's kind of how it goes. Well, that, of course, is illegal. But since they don't specifically say they're against white dudes and more that they're encouraging these other groups to apply, it's very hard to prove that you were discriminated against. But now there's a new court case that just went through up to the Supreme Court of the United States, and it was about a woman, and I'll read down through this very briefly, but it was about a woman, a Sergeant Jatonia Muldrow, which Jatonia doesn't sound like Becky. It sounds like somebody that might have had a little bit of skin tone, and she was transferred from her intelligence division to another unit and kind of given a downgrade in responsibility and esteem, I guess you could say, but she didn't lose any money. Well, the court finally get up to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said, yeah, no, you can't do this stuff. And ironically, by protecting a minority woman, the way the law is written, it actually also protects white dudes. So Supreme Court holds that a Title VII plaintiff challenging a work transfer need not show significant harm. This was Muldrow versus the city of St. Louis, and this was brought up to the Supreme Court. They say today the Supreme Court held that a Title VII plaintiff challenging a forced job transfer as discriminatory must show some harm from the transfer, but not need to show the harm was significant, material, or serious, just some. So in the past, if say, for example, I was let's say I was a group supervisor at McDonald's, right? Or I was a regional manager at McDonald's, and I had 100 stores under me, and they transferred me to be a regional manager of a McDonald's area that only had 10 stores underneath me. But I retained the same income. I retained the same company car maybe, and I retained the same job title. But now I'm responsible for a lot less, and I can claim that is harming me from getting a promotion or futuring my career because it's not letting me live to my full or work to my full potential. I know this is kind of hard to explain, but and so that's showing some discriminatory act versus harmful or significant. And that's a big difference. They say the background, the Civil Rights Act of 1964, Title VII, prohibits discrimination in the terms, conditions, or privileges of employment because of race, religion, sex, or national origin. In 2017, following a change in leadership in the St. Louis Police Department, Sergeant Jatonia Muldrow was transferred from the Intelligence Division to another unit. The transfer did not affect Muldrow's regular pay or rank, but she was allegedly moved from a plainclothes job in a prestigious specialized division, gaining her substantial responsibility over priority investigations and frequent opportunity to work with police commanders, to a uniform job supervising one district's patrol officers, in which she was less involved in high visibility matters and primarily performed administrative work. Her schedule became less regular, often requiring her to work weekends, and she lost her take-home car. She alleged that no male sergeants were transferred out of the intelligence division and that she was replaced with a male sergeant. Now, ironically, it's a woman. She's probably a minority. She was moved and transferred to a less prestigious position, even though everything else was the same, the money, the title, everything. And she complained, and the Supreme Court, in a 9-0, which means even the lefty judges, agreed, hey, you can't do this. Well, when you hear it, at least in the United States, I know many of you in Australia and Europe have these weird rules that are against men only, and we do have a couple of them. But when it comes to things like this, United States, according to the Constitution, so far is still pretty good about protecting both sides equally. So if you write a law to protect a brown woman, it also should include a white male. Well, this went through, and even the lefties, the left-leaning judges, agreed 9-0 that, hey, this is we shouldn't do this. Well, Freedom Piper here on Twitter did a good write-up of explaining how this protects men. They say, breaking in a landmark 9-0 ruling on Wednesday that you will never hear about in the media, the U.S. Supreme Court has undercut all diversity, equity, inclusion-based discrimination, sending the Marxists into a tizzy. The U.S. Supreme Court's ruling that a St. Louis police sergeant can sue over a job transfer she claims was discriminatory lays the foundation for legal action against employers, work assignments, and promotion. Against employers who push discrimination against white people in job hiring, work assignment, and promotion. That's right, those diversity-preferred job postings, the practice of passing over whites for promotions, discriminatory job transfers, pushing unfair diversity trainings, etc., all of those are now legally actionable. Now, it doesn't mean that necessarily they'll win, but it does mean that they can sue, and based on the Supreme Court's ruling here, all lower courts will have to or should refer to the Supreme Court ruling because that is the most definitive and most powerful court of the land. So that's very good. Also, if a court were to rule against somebody, they can reference the Supreme Court and ask for a retrial, basically. I don't know all the legal terms. I'm not a legal guy, but you get what I'm saying, that they can say, hey, this is not a fair case because you ignored what the Supreme Court said, and they've already made a judgment on this, and now you're ignoring a higher court. They say the ruling was championed by human rights groups as an enormous win for workers, but has lawyers for companies like Disney warning that it could have a chilling effect on employers' diversity initiatives. Disney's pale and male is stale policy is a prime example. Disney has allegedly used it to drive out white animators by giving them the worst assignments, even though they themselves have the most experience, skill, and seniority, in order to make the job humiliating enough that they quit, which many of them have done. So let's say you're and again, I'm just using examples, but let's say you're a 30-year Disney animator and you've done some of the most prolific and popular movies out there, and you drawing main characters, drawing storyboards, putting together storylines, and they take you from doing that to painting background, stationary background. They don't really do that much anymore. But if you look at the old cartoons, you could see there was the matte painting, and then they just moved the slides over the matte painting in the back. Well, if you give guys that have a lot of experience that boring, dull work, even if you didn't take away their pay, and now they're no longer utilizing any of their skills, many of them are going to get bored and look for something else to do, and that's what Disney did to some of them. They say the same companies argue there's a good discrimination and bad discrimination, that white people should be purposefully disadvantaged to pave the way for diversity. The lawyers stated that the decision will complicate DEI programs and limit their ability to discriminate against white men. Oh boy, I bet they're really upset about that. They say the Supreme Court torpedoed these claims, reasserting that everyone is equal in the eyes of the law. Further, the court has established a relatively low standard for bringing discrimination cases. The harmed need not suffer actual harm. An employee only must show some harm under the terms of their employment, and that harm need not be material, substantial, or serious, meaning it doesn't have to be money. It doesn't have to be substantial or a big deal or serious. It can just be something. Now, are there ways that this could, have a backlash? Probably, and I'm sure there's some people that will find it. But as they say here, the decision makes it much easier for workers to sue over discriminatory practices. This is a big win for equality. Ironically, and they did have a link here to the Supreme Court's. This is Supreme Court here. It's Supreme Court of the United States, Muldrow versus City of St. Louis, and they have the full write-up here, which is 22 pages, and I'm not going to go through the whole thing. But I did want to mention this because a lot of times, here's the thing: if you see a job posting and they say we're looking basically for everybody but white men, that's not a company you want to work for. It just isn't. Unfortunately, a lot of companies are like this today. And if you're struggling getting a job, or you find yourself applying for a lot of jobs and you're not getting anywhere, is it going to be a thing where people start printing up, the advertisement for the job, showing that they're listing everybody but white dudes, and there's some action taken against this? I don't know, but I can tell you this: that in our country's history, when you look back at our founding fathers, ironically, the founding fathers were young enough, many of them, to be my son. You hear about the founding fathers without realizing many of them were in their 20s. So a lot of you young guys out there, I'm 20 years old. I don't have any responsibility. I don't care. No one wants. You're the age of the men that built our country. And those men, many of them lost material. They lost their families. They lost their homes. Some of them lost their lives. And so when it comes to fighting a culture war today, I think the minimum you could do is maybe change where you live. The minimum you could do is boycott companies that are woke or are anti-men. The minimum you could do is if you apply for a bunch of jobs and they turn you down, and there's a job posting, the minimum you could do is go around shopping for lawyers to see if someone will take your case. Now, many may not. And yes, it might take you some time, and I don't know if it would cost you any money. Usually lawyers like that will say, well, we'll take a proceed of partial of your winnings or something like that. When you go back to the strong men make good times, our founding fathers were very strong young men in their 20s, many of them. When you look at the pictures of them, you see them with wigs on and they look like 60-year-old men, but many of them were young men. So when it comes to them being able to basically tell another country to shove it, and they're going to take arms and they go to war to start a new country, and then you talk to men today and they say, well, I don't want to rock the boat. I don't want to take my kid out of public school and find a way to homeschool them or maybe do a community type school that doesn't have anything to do with the federal government. I don't feel like moving or finding a new job or packing up and moving to a more rural area or another state where they value where their values and my values line up a lot better. I don't feel like suing a company just because they say they don't want a white guy. Those are part of the reason why we're in such a mess today, because nobody says, something, I'm going to fight back against this. I'm going to do something about it. I don't have an awful lot that I feel like I need to push back against because, I'm not in the work world anymore, and I'm in a conservative area of the country, and most people around me think like me. So it's not like I'm in New York City and I'm getting arrested for putting somebody on a subway in a chokehold trying to protect other people. Here, if I did the same thing, I probably would have been lauded as a hero and savior of women and children. There's a big difference on where you live and what you do. Well, we need to start pushing back against this. If the courts can do it, and the courts are saying, yes, these policies are wrong, then we have standing. Maybe it's time guys stopped, got off their soft asses and went out and started fighting for stuff. And what I mean is if you're applying for jobs, if you get fired, if you get somebody else gets a promotion over you, even though they have less experience and a worse work record, maybe you can collect some of that data. Maybe you can go talk to a lawyer and say, hey, let's do discovery. Let's collect these emails. Let's go to a company and make them suffer for what they did to me. Because a lot of companies say, well, all right, we could give them $500,000, or we have to give up all our emails. It'll go public. It'll let everybody know that we're kind of pulling fast ones behind the backs of our investors or whatever. And a lot of companies don't want to do that. You can win. That's why the left wins so many settlement cases, because they're sue hungry and they just sue over anything because they feel slighted. And companies say, all right, we don't want to deal with this. Just, pay them off. Or it's another reason why the companies say, you know what, they're screaming at us. Just go ahead and put out a policy that, be less white, and maybe they'll shut up and leave us alone. And that's why our culture keeps lurching left right off a cliff. I think we need to be the same way. We need to get off our butts and sue back and be. I don't like being litigious and things like that. But if they're gonna shut down men, if they're gonna shut down white people, if they're gonna shut down straight people, at some point you either fight back or the culture's just gone. It's too far gone. And it's like I said the other day when I was talking about getting a cut. The sooner you address that cut, the quicker it goes away and the less problematic it is. But if you let it sit and fester and get worse, then pretty soon you're lopping off a limb to just save your body. That's what we're doing with this stuff. It's going further and further and further, and either a lot of people don't know about it, or a lot of people are going, well, it doesn't really involve me. I'm just not going to do anything about it, and then everything goes crazy. And I'll leave it with this little story. I'll leave it with this little snippet. I have a dentist here in Knoxville, which is a very conservative area. I've been going there for the year and a half that I'm here. About every 6 months, I go in for a cleaning and everything else. And one day, I walked into my dentist office, and on their window, they had the LDHD TV flag with all the, stripes and triangles and things on it. And I was not happy. I do not want to give my money to businesses that perpetuate the craziness, basically. So after my cleaning and everything, I went to the main desk to pay, and I said to the woman, I said, I don't mean to, jump into all this stuff, but I gotta ask you a question. Do you know what the colors in that flag stand for? Now, here's what's so crazy. There were two women that were working behind the desk. Both of them looked like 50-year-old lesbians, right? They were older women, and they were heavier set and everything else. I said, do you know what the colors in that flag mean? And the one woman said, well, I mean, I know what the rainbow portion of it stands for. So does my wife. So she played for the same team, right? She said, so does my wife. She said, but I don't know what the triangle portion means. I said, how did that, like, who put that there? And she said, the business owner, his wife put it up here because the dentist, my dentist, his wife put it in there. And I said, well, the pink stripe or the pink little portion of that and the blue portion of that stands for boys and girls. That stands for infant, baby boys, baby girls. I said, I'm an open-minded adult. I don't care if adults want to get into this, if, you and your wife or girlfriend or whatever don't care, I have zero care. But what bothers me about that flag is that it purposefully puts in colors of infant blue, and baby pink. They purposely put that in there. And she said, geez, I never thought of it that way. I didn't realize that. And I said, it might be something to keep in mind. And I don't know if you want to tell the dentist's wife, or whatever, but, it's something that you should know because she's putting that message out there. She said, oh, okay, well, I appreciate it. I said, okay, thanks. I was writing my check, and my dentist was behind me, and I didn't realize it. And he said, I didn't know that. And I said, yes, sir. Yeah, It's again, I don't care what adults do and everything, but this is promoting it to people that are not old enough to make these decisions, in my opinion. And so I find this very offensive because it's targeting kids. And you're over 18, you live your life. I don't care. I'm a pretty libertarian guy when it comes to that stuff. But they specifically are and I said, look what's going on in the schools right now and all the classroom stuff. And he said, what's going on in the schools? And I pulled out my phone and I was like pointing to stuff in some of the books. I must have been there for 20 minutes. I gave a little lecture to like the three of them. And at the end of that, he's like, and he walked over and he peeled off the flag and he said, I'll take this to my wife and I'll talk to her about it and I'll let her know. But I appreciate you letting. Now, the next time I went back in for my dental appointment, there was a regular rainbow flag there. So I didn't win much of a battle. Apparently, his wife still wants to support the LDHD TV and broadcast it. But you know what? If a company wants to put a religious, because to me, I look at that now as a religious symbol. To me, that's like a business deciding to put a little cross and just saying, Jesus saves. When you put that there, you're telling me what your religion is and what your belief system is. The dentist didn't have the willpower to tell his wife no. The ladies behind the counter, I guess, they're part of that community, and they were probably fine with it being put up there. My dentist himself, I don't think he cares one way or another. Now, ironically, I haven't gone back for a cleaning or anything yet because I haven't needed one. And I don't know, I don't think I'm going to go back to that same dentist office because I just don't like putting my money into those type of causes. I tend to put my money in various things. But that kind of discussion, which is uncomfortable and awkward, and thank God I have a little bit of comfort in speaking, and I know because I was a manager of a store for many, many years, so I had to interact with very upset customers a lot. So you learn how to speak kindly and to get your point across without becoming combative or confrontational. I'm very good at that. So I was able to get my point across. I was able to express and you know what? Maybe I only made a sliver of a change, a tiny change, but I still made some sort of a change. And if we can have these conversations and we can come across as not the crazies, but as the intellectual, stoic, intelligent ones that are pushing for these causes or fighting or making sure we're protecting men and, everybody equally, maybe there's a chance at this. But too many people today say, I don't want to be bothered. It's awkward. I don't care. I'll be a hermit. I'm being a hermit, but you can still, when the opportunity arises, push back against some of this, and maybe someday we can make some changes. Either way, this is a win. It's not a huge win, but it is a big blow against the woke DEI, and it is a good win for men. And hopefully some men will step up, decide to get some lawyers and fight the good fight, because gosh knows we need to push back against the craziness. Guys, if you like my work, please join us at betterbachelor.locals.com. Become a supporter today. It's $4 a month if you do the yearly. It's $5 a month if you just want to try a month or two, less than a cup of coffee. I would appreciate if you did, and it helps keep me independent so I can keep doing interesting stories like this.